So you may or may not have heard, but there's a bit of a housing crisis in California. Yeah, it's become a bit of a big deal around here, but it makes sense. With property and rent going up and up and up, making it essentially impossible for young people to buy a home and leaving the middle class behind, and as more and more people are situating themselves far away from their jobs just to be able to live a comfortable lifestyle, the solution seems obvious: build more housing. But most of the time, that means one of two things. The first being the building of new car centric neighborhoods in nice but far out and frankly boring places, such as Riverside County, Fresno, and Tracy, adding to the legacy of land grabbing, overly expensive, isolating urban sprawl that has defined urban development everywhere for the past several decades. But at least the houses are new and usually pretty nice. But good luck with the hours spent in unbearable traffic. The second scenario is high density apartments within the already developed urban areas. This also has its pros and cons. The good being that it brings people closer together in a way that is both spatially efficient and possibly promotes a more community oriented environment. It brings more depth and interest into the local urban landscape, and at its best, can make the city more beautiful with pleasing architecture, stir demand for more mixed use development and local small businesses, become a commuter base for nearby transit, and be an affordable option for young people. But at its worst, it can be overly dense, hurting the local environment, driving away families, and even discouraging people from starting them. This makes for a not so great crowd, which is a problem in a lot of inner cities, and also has contributed to the lowering of fertility rates in countries where a very high proportion of the population live in high rises, such as Hong Kong and South Korea. And also, developments beyond a certain size have the tendency of being out of scale, and frankly, really ugly, which does have a major impact on the atmosphere of the area if there is this gargantuan ugly building being an ever-present monolith. On top of this, it locks out homeownership, instead just enriching the corporations that own these large apartment blocks. But also, it's often largely unnecessary. As someone that grew up in LA, I would always find it strange to see a massive apartment complex where people are being packed in like sardines, but right next door to some one-story mini mall with a massive surface parking lot. The land use in our cities is just horrible, and there is plenty of room for most people to live in single-family homes, townhouses, and condos, but have far denser cities than what we have now, even with our current abundance of high-density apartment blocks. Take a city like San Jose with a population density of 5,700 people per square mile, and now compare that to Lyon, France, which has a density of 27,000 people per square mile. Does a huge proportion of San Jose live in single-family homes? Yes, but 11.2% of the housing structures in San Jose have 20 or more units, which, if you think about it, is actually quite a lot. This means 36% of San Jose residents live in apartment housing, and that number just does not correlate to having a density less than a fifth of that in Lyon. The difference therefore lies in two main factors. The first is the heaps of space that is wasted. Too many roads that are far too wide, surface lots that cover acres and acres of land, and random awkward spaces that could be something but are just nothing. Even just listing it out like this fails to grasp how present of an issue this is throughout the entire city. And the other factor is the zoning. Main roads where gentle density mixed use development that serves the local neighborhood would make a lot of sense aren't taken advantage of at all. And rather, the commercial zoning is fixated on ugly and oversized shopping plazas that you have to drive to and thus have giant parking lots. And rather than offices being interspersed amongst the bustling neighborhood centers or main roads, they instead take the form of dedicated office parks that do a great job of wasting a lot of space through its single use. And so even though there is more than enough room in San Jose to house people in a more gentle, family-friendly way, like how we see in cities like Lyon, due to difficult zoning laws and other challenging legal hurdles, you end up with more and more people having to live in dense high-rises with less and less people having the opportunity to actually buy a home, when really this situation was entirely avoidable with just smarter urban planning and regulations. But here we are, and tackling this issue is extremely complex and difficult. Overcoming all the redlining and legal obstacles to correct the situation is extremely expensive and moves far too incrementally, to the point where very little could ever be done. If only there was some way to just start from scratch. As a content creator, cybersecurity and data protection has become extremely important to me. Since my YouTube channel has grown, I've gotten a massive influx of scam calls and attempted sign-ins into my account, and it's genuinely worrying. I know one of the reasons I was getting so many spam texts and calls is because big companies can't keep our data safe. As I talked about last time, recently, AT&T revealed that nearly all of their customers' call and text records had been exposed in a massive data breach. And it hasn't even been a few months since they admitted over 70 million of their users' social security numbers ended up on the dark web. The stolen logs also contain a record for every number AT&T customers called or texted. So even if you don't use AT&T, if someone who texted you did, then your number has been exposed. So what can you do to protect yourself? You can use Aura, like I do, the sponsor of today's video. Aura will alert me if they find my phone number or any other sensitive information that has been compromised. And they give me fast fraud alerts if anyone tries to use that data to access my credit or bank accounts. Aura does so much to keep me and my family safe too. I also get things like transaction monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, parental controls, and identity theft insurance. I get all of this in one app at one affordable price. I can also get their AI-powered call assistant that will pick up unknown calls on my behalf to screen them for spam and scams. The AI forwards legitimate calls to me, so I don't miss appointments, deliveries, and emergencies. And it protects me from harmful text messages by filtering out known spam numbers and scanning links in the message for phishing threats. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/alexanderotmans and try your first 2 weeks for free, all linked below in the description. Welcome to the East Solano plan by California Forever, a potential brand new city coming to Solano County, California. With a land area of just over 27 square miles and a capacity of 400,000 people, the city will have a density of around 14,500 people per square mile, almost 3 times of that of San Jose, but no one will be living in high-density apartment complexes. Instead, there will be gentle density, with people living in townhouses, mixed-use developments, and even single-family homes. But with narrow roads, minimal parking, and walkability at the heart of its design, no space is going to waste. In fact, of that 27 square miles, 20% is fully devoted to natural habitats, parks, and open green spaces. And even then, without any apartment complexes or medium and high rises, we're talking about a far denser and more efficient urban landscape than the typical US city. So, how did the East Solano plan become a thing, and is it really as perfect as it seems? The California Forever Corporation was founded in 2017 by Jan Stramek, with the goal of creating a new, environmentally sustainable city with a high quality of life for middle-class residents that, while creating and providing jobs, also served as a preferable alternative to the sprawling neighborhoods and high-density apartments of most Bay Area commuters. And with a huge backing of Silicon Valley billionaires investing in the project, clearly there is intent for those that live here to be working in Silicon Valley, perhaps through easily accessible rapid transit or moving offices and jobs to the new city. The Bay Area's housing and urban planning situation has been identified as a major obstacle in its continued economic growth. And with more and more tech companies moving away from California to other states like Texas and Florida, this, what has been dubbed Utopian City, is the grand response. Some people may be critical of the idea of billionaire-funded cities, but they're coming. And there's actually other examples of this sprouting throughout the country, such as the Walmart city of Tolosa. And if you want my take on it, I basically agree with this Reddit comment. I'd rather this than yachts and private jets. After all, there's actually a long history of the wealthy giving back to the public through either beautiful buildings or neighborhoods. Where do you think the Rockefeller Center in New York came from, after all? And this is unfortunately a tradition that has been somewhat lost in recent times, so it's good to see it making a comeback. And the other point to that is, has the government done much better? Have our municipalities and states been effective in the way of building beautiful streets, neighborhoods, and cities that promote healthy, sustainable, and pedestrian-based lifestyles? Rarely yes in some truly exceptional cases, but almost always no. And so, private funding with a bold vision is the only way a city of this magnitude with classical urbanist philosophy is ever going to get done at this point, as harsh of a reality as that may be. And who knows, maybe the East Solano plan will be so successful that it will drive our cities to finally make some big changes. But just how good is this plan? Let's take a look. Here is a map showing the city's layout. As you can see, most of it will be dedicated neighborhood mixed-use space with cafes, restaurants, schools, and other amenities interspersed amongst a range of housing options, with some apartments that sit above the storefronts, but mostly condos, terraced houses, and single-family homes with backyards, with an aim to provide homeownership opportunities. There is an option to have a car garage, but it is not required, and there will be dedicated spaces in each neighborhood and district for shared parking garages, meaning that you can still drive throughout the city if you want to, but rather than parking being everywhere, there are dedicated spots for entire areas, with all relevant amenities in walking distance, as well as easy access to rapid transit. This saves a ton of space, as this means the city only has to have so many parking spots. Take a city like Des Moines, which is 212,000 people, but 1.6 million parking spots. This is very costly and just ruins cities. And this is typical for most places in America. Having a system like the one in the East Solano plan means that driving is perfectly available and convenient, but the road and parking system is just significantly more efficient. But either way, East Solano's walkability and mixed-use planning means that many trips that are often taken by car in most of the country will now be easy walking distance. We already know that more than half of car trips in the US are 5 miles or less, indicating that these trips are mostly local errands, such as getting groceries, picking up medication, meeting at a friend's house, or dropping kids off at school. I don't think anyone is complaining about turning these tedious drives into simple strolls, even amongst the biggest motor enthusiasts. And so, if you thought that traffic might be a problem in this city, just like that, we've eliminated half of all potential trips. And to add to this, quality of life significantly increases with so many amenities so easily available to you. One of the best parts about living in a city with good urbanism is being able to wake up in your house in the morning and take a short walk to the local cafe and getting a cup of coffee. But for the vast majority of Americans, even for those who live in heavily urbanized areas, this is a fantasy, with the quote-unquote local Starbucks drive-thru being their only option. And so these third spaces where one can meet with their neighbors, establish a local culture and camaraderie, something that was once standard to all civilizational dwellings but has been lost in the mess of modern urban planning, can actually be brought back. And the positive effects this has is worth a whole video of its own. Another key aspect of the East Solano plan will be its integrated bus rapid transit or BRT system, which will enable people to traverse across the city when destinations are beyond walking distance and without a car. Designing a city around a transit system, rather than spending a whole lot of money building one into a city that wasn't designed for it, is obviously a major advantage the city will have. While some people may question why they aren't going with rail, it's important to note that if they wanted to upgrade to rail, they could, as many BRTs have in the past. And that this way, they are saving significant amounts of money. And after all, if the BRT system works perfectly fine, then does it really matter? But okay, enough positivity. My channel has laid a solid foundation on negativity and sadness, so I have to live up to it at least a little bit. And with that, the architecture I'm seeing from these renderings is, well, pretty meh. I don't want to sound petty about this, though that is too late, but it's true. While the gentle density, walkability, lack of concrete and roads, emphasis on green spaces, and buildings with warm colors and sustainable materials is all very positive, it makes the city better and more aesthetic than 95% of what is out there. The lack of classical architecture and artistic ambition does create a hole in an otherwise amazing project. This city, as of now, is essentially copy and pastable, and that's a problem. Cities and towns in California should look like they're in California. They should reveal the land's history and culture with just a glance. And boxy modernist buildings that would fit in a Westfield mall come across as plain and will inevitably become outdated. If the East Solano plan were to fully integrate timeless classical architecture, it would elevate the city into potentially being the best in the country, not even kidding. Look at this library in this rendering, for example. Not exactly awe-inspiring or unique, but libraries in classical cities around the world and throughout history have been structures of precision, detail, and pure exquisiteness. These institutions are meant to stand for centuries, and through its design, mean something that strikes at the heart of the city it's in. This is just wood and glass panels. But this isn't to say that some of these homes and buildings in the renderings don't look great, and some of the park and recreational spaces particularly look absolutely spectacular. And the other issue that has been at the forefront of the controversy around this development is that with the city's construction will mean more agricultural land being handed over for urban development. Northern California is one of the most beautiful regions in the world, and so it is sad to see more of its natural landscape being eaten up, especially when the urban areas that we already have, like our good friend San Jose, has plenty of room and potential to house far more people without a single blade of grass being paved over. But as I said earlier, this development plan is realistically the only way we're going to see developments like this be done on a large scale in this country, since the bureaucracy and red tape of our existing cities is a nearly impossible obstacle to overcome. And I'd much rather the next 400,000 people who move to California live here than in a far more destructive, never ending, ever expanding urban sprawl that would be built to accommodate them. Let's hope that this plan gets built and serves as a major stepping stone for a nationwide urban planning and regulatory overhaul that can just maybe repair the damage done by our wasteful, ugly, and oppressive modernist city building of the post-war era. We're just going to have to wait and see. If it takes some billionaires to make that happen, so let it be written, so let it be done. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.